Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we discuss the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Bill Flynn, who's a best-selling author, international speaker. I probably could go on there, Bill, as your accolades, but today we're going to be talking about Bill's new book, Further, Faster, the vital few steps that take the guesswork out of growth. Welcome to the show, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm really glad to be here. I know it took us a little time to figure this out. Our bodies did not cooperate, but it seems like we're both relatively healthy, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, we made it happen. I'm so sorry it took so long. As a podcast host, having an issue with your ear is probably the worst thing to have on there, but I'm glad to be back with you. I gave a very short intro because I want to kind of leave it to you. Give us a little bit more of your background and journey to where we are today, because I think it's pretty cool and interesting.
Yeah, sure. There are probably two arcs to my journey. And first is I was a startup guy. So I did 10 startups for over 25 years. And, had a pretty good track record. I was 5 for 6 and then ended up as 5 for 10 or 5 for 7, depending on how much my contribution is to each of those things. Either I left them or they left me somewhere in there. But regardless, it was a pretty good track record. And I love startups. It's such a fun thing to do. I love the clean sheet of paper. I love figuring stuff out. I love the puzzle. But somewhere between startup 5 and 6, I had an experience where I basically was a coach. I think it was about 6 years ago. I said, okay, do I want to do an 11 startup or what do I want to do? And I sort of pulled back that memory and I said, I want to try to do more of that. So I decided I wanted to try to become a coach. I looked at, I think probably 6 or 7 different business operating systems, scaling up to EOS, to eMyth and Value Builder and Action Coach and Strategic, all these little things and different kinds of things. And I found one that I liked. I got certified like 4 months later, and then I was off. And I love it. I now know what a calling is. I really love my clients. I went today at noon to 4, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
The day flies by when I'm with them. From that, as you said, I published a book. I'm kind of an accidental author. I don't like to write, but I was asked by many people, clients and coaching peers, that I sort of they would tell me I had this sort of unique perspective on things. So I should write it down. So I didn't write it myself. I hired a company. I was smart enough to know that it would take me years to write a book myself.
Yeah.
We went from concept to published book in 9 months, which was great. It was a blast. I love doing it. I'll probably do another one. I don't know when. It's pretty expensive. And you'll never make the money back from, most business books only sell like 300 to 500 copies. The rest you give away. But you never know. So that's what I do now. I coach folks. I teach them a framework. It's really sort of the essence of the book. And so I can get in more depth as we go on that.
Amazing. Just going back for a second, what was it about entrepreneurship that attracted you? Was it did you have family members did you grow up around entrepreneurs? Or
no.
When did that moment happen when you said, this is what I want to pursue?
My dad was a pipe fitter. So he was a mechanic basically. My mom was a teacher. So I guess a teacher to some degree has some entrepreneurial skills, right? Because you kind of have your own business there in your classroom. But I did have an uncle who was an investment banker and a VC. And when I graduated college, he kind of took me under his wing and said, hey, let me help you. And I went on a bunch of informational interviews when I was 22, 23 years old. And I got a job and I got into sales. And from that, I sort of met a bunch of people. And my first startup, it was sort of a startup, was a company called Dragon Systems, which eventually became the impetus for Siri.
What age was you when you started that?
Yeah, so I was 27.
27. Okay, wow.
Yeah, 1991. I was 27, I think, 28. I can't remember. I was in my mid to late 20s, and I just loved it. I loved it. I loved the whole idea of figuring stuff out, I sort of got better at sales. I eventually became the head of sales. I think I was the head of sales 8 times in different startups and things. So it was really that puzzle, right? It was that this is uncharted territory. You have to figure it out. I mean, it's scary, but which is funny. I'm extremely conservative when I'm not, I'm generally fiscally conservative, but I love that stuff. And I would have done an 11 startup if I felt I could have figured out how to find what I call the Goldilocks founder. And the Goldilocks founder is a founder that is crazy, because you have to be crazy, because what you're doing the odds are completely against you. So you have to.
People don't realize that, right?
Yeah, you don't. You have to sort of distort reality a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can't be too crazy and just sort of fall in love with your idea. And too many fell in love with their idea. And I was always the sales and marketing guy. And it was my job to tell the founder that, well, nobody cares about your idea. They only really care what your idea does for them. So let's figure that out. And if we can turn that and combine that with your idea or something like your idea, we got something.
Yeah.
But I had a really hard time with that with the last 3 or 4 founders. So I decided not to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I did. I just still love what I'm doing.
What I noticed as well is like, because this is my first company and it's not been easy, but we've definitely, on the right track. I would class us as pretty successful. And I look back and I kind of talk to other founders and go to kind of different meetups with different founders. And what I realized is having a background in sales, because my whole career I've been in sales director roles, is the key to our success, a massive part of the puzzle. Because I see so many companies with these incredible products and solutions, but they just don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to take it to market. Would you say that was one of the keys to your successes as well, having that sales experience?
I think it definitely helped. But I've found over the years that if you really believe what you do, you're a really good salesperson.
That's a good point.
I don't care what skills or techniques you have. Yes, it'll be better if you sort of have some tools, but I think it's a confidence issue. I think people are afraid of sales.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And then and that fear comes through when you're selling, and the other person
can feel it. Yeah, they can. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what you're selling.
I say that to my team all the time to do. So I'm like, if you don't believe it, well, how can you expect your customer to buy it if you don't believe it as well? And that's, I guess, the point where, for me and Shane and the team, we're so passionate about what we do. We're selling anyway, whether we like it or not.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes, we have techniques, and I'm trained, and Shane is too. So we obviously have a bit more advanced, an advanced skill set. But I've seen people sell with just passion alone to that point.
Yeah. I mean, emotions are the decision fact. That's the driver of decisions. Mm-hmm. Right. When we make a decision, our limbic system, our emotional centers light up first. It's not a rational process. So if you love what you do and you can sort of give off that vibe, you're just much more likely to sell than doing feeds and speeds and data and whatever and features and benefits. People don't buy for features and benefits. People buy for emotional reasons.
Yeah.
They just don't know it. And then they make up the reasons after the fact.
And then if you combine both, then it becomes, that's when things get interesting.
There's this great metaphor by Jonathan Haidt, who's an evolutionary psychologist. He's a professor at Stern at New York University. And he has this metaphor of the elephant and the rider. Your brain is basically an elephant and a rider. And the elephant is this sort of emotional, irrational, impulsive side. And it's an elephant. So if it wants something, it gets it. There's really nothing the rider can do. And the rider is this sort of rational thing that's supposed to control the elephant. And what actually the rider does most of the time is just make up reasons for the elephant's behavior.
Yeah.
So if you can appeal to both the elephant and the rider, you have a great advantage over other people. So I agree. Yeah.
In your experience, what are the top 3 things or top things that companies should focus on for growth early on?
So the first thing you have to do is team. So this is sort of, we're going to get into my book a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. I think team is the most important thing. Most things in business are done by teams, not by individuals. I know Marcus Buckingham at ADP did a bunch of research, and he said that I think he did it for 19 countries. He talked to 1,000 people each country and just asked a basic question, which is, are you on a team or not? And 83% were on at least one team. 67% of those people were on more than one team. And another large percentage of those people were on even more than 2 teams. And most of those teams that were in that third layer weren't even represented in the org chart. Yet we don't teach people how to be a good team leader. And running a team is a skill. Anyone can learn how to do it, but we don't teach it at all. It's sort of like parenthood. It's like, we just expect people to read a book or whatever. Yeah. Some people are really good parents and some people aren't. It's not innate to be a good parent. It's not innate to be a good team leader. So if you're the head of a company, I'd say the first thing you should do is have a university class, either internal or external, that teaches people how to run a great team, how to attract the right people, how to design and craft the team, how to then understand the value of the team to the company, how you can grow the people to increase that value. We don't do that at all. And so my book goes into some great detail on that. And I use stuff like from Amy Edmondson and Marcus Buckingham. And none of my thoughts are really original. I'm just sort of a collator of things. So that's the first thing. You remember that performance is a team sport. It really is for almost everything. Unless you're an artist or a creative person, then sometimes you're really the driver. But that's such an ephemeral, and that's a hard thing to recreate anyway. And that's not what I'm about. I'm about repetition and scalability. The next thing is that if you're running a business, you have to understand that your business is a system. The main two components of your system, of your business, are strategy and execution, and they are connected. So strategy and execution are connected. If you like Simon Sinek, this is what the infinite game is about.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to understand that that is a circle that never ends. You know, and there's this funny little cartoon I read a number of years ago, and you could see the leader at the beginning with the suit and the tie on, and it's a man, right? Of course. And he says, "Okay, we have 10 minutes left. Let's do strategy now." It's like, no, it's not like a 10-minute exercise. It's a never-ending exercise. You're always doing strategy. You're always saying, are we really delighting our customers? Are we really understanding how we can differentiate from the rest of the market? You know, are we solving the problem as fully as possible? And then you're doing that or not when you execute on it, because you find the holes, and then you say, okay, let's fix the strategy, and you just sort of keep going. So that's one system, and it has to be cohesive, right? It needs to be this cohesive system that ties up to your long-term aims, you know, your vision, your BHAG, or whatever you sort of ascribe to, North Star, but also must be cohesive to your team. Do I have the right people in the right seats doing the right things? Am I training them to get better? And so they don't need me. Your job as a leader is to make yourself unnecessary. To leading the team itself. They should be generally self-driving, and you sort of have to kick them into play every now and again, right? They sort of go off the tracks, but that's it. You shouldn't be like managing your team day to day. That's ineffective. And lastly is, if you really want to grow, and this is a 30-year sales and marketing guy saying this, cash has to be your primary financial growth metric, because growth sucks cash, and it does it in front of growth. Because you have to invest in front of growing, right? You have to hire people, you have to build a plant, you have to buy software, et cetera. And most of us think that revenue is the thing, or even profit. I tell you, revenue and profit aren't the thing. I mean, profit leads to cash, but not always. There is only one financial line on your P&L or your balance sheet that will not lie to you. You can make all the other ones lie to you. Revenue, profit, everything in the middle, COGS. You can make up stuff and fool yourself. You cannot fool yourself with cash. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah, it's so true.
So that's sort of the three things that I focus on. That's what the book is on. And about 30 years of research, really mostly the last 5 years, I've found that the best companies, and I'm not talking about companies that have been around for 10 or 15 years. I'm talking about companies that have been around for generations and centuries in some cases. They do those three things really, really well, and over again.
Yeah. And once you kind of understand and have those things in place, it's just about, I always say to the team, it's like just almost to the point of doing the basics to a high standard consistently. Like if we do the basics to a high standard consistently, just that alone, like let alone trying to be, if we just did the basics to a high standard consistently, day in, day out, once we know what works, that is, obviously we get to that stage, then we can innovate on top of that and take it to the next level. But we have to get that right first. Otherwise things just fall apart. Otherwise.
I have a cute story there if you'd like.
Go for it.
It has nothing to do with business. I was my daughter's soccer or football coach for 10 years. And I took over as head coach. And when I took over, her team was 1-9. And our plus minus was, and we only played 10 games a year. Our plus minus was minus 17. We were horrible, and I think we won 1-0, and like the other team was an own goal or something. It was really just terrible. And so that's what I did. I focused on two things. I focused on the basics. I said, we're going to give you touches of the ball. All our practice is going to be, everyone's going to touch the ball as much as possible. We're not going to do anything fancy. There's no crosses, that kind of stuff. Nothing fancy. And then I did one other thing. I said, we're going to reward effort. I just want to reward effort. And I created this thing called Super Socks. And we gave away 2 Super Socks after every game. And in the first 2 years, the first 2 seasons, the coaches did it. And then the second 2 seasons, they were 13 and 14. We had the captains of the day, because everyone could be a captain. And then the coach would give another. So the girls would give one, and then the men would give the other. Because I wanted them to feel
That's
like they're
great.
part
Yeah.
of
In
it.
the sense of, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great to do
So
that.
I was their head coach for 4 seasons. The last season, we were 9-1, and we were plus 13. Same girls, basically same level of soccer. It was tremendous. And the reason we lost the one game was because 5 of my 14-year-olds had something they had to do with school that day. And my goalie, who was my daughter, who never let, my daughter did not let in 1 goal in 9 games.
Wow.
It was a shutout for 9 games.
Especially in soccer as well. That's tough to do. Yeah.
And these are, and she's only like 5'5". I mean,
In a huge goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gave her a little trick because we weren't at the highest level. We were generally my daughter's a swimmer. She's not a soccer player. So I was coaching the lesser skilled girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, here's what you want to do. I said, if there's ever a one-on-one with you, I said, I need you to sprint straight at the girl.
Cut the angle.
As fast as you can and make yourself as
Yeah,
big
because
as
you cut the angle, right? Yeah.
You will freak her out and she's going to shoot wide or hit you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And you're also losing the angle. That's what she did. And I got to tell you, it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
But that was so rewarding. It was such a wonderful thing. And so it also proves that, that's what a leader does, right? You create the conditions for success.
Yes.
Let the girls do it, but also reward and remind them that it's about the effort. It's not necessarily about the achievement. I didn't care if they won or lost. It's about the achievement. And they just happened to win every time. And just to close the story out, we did play that team the second time. It was the last game of the season, 5-0.
So you're like, see?
My daughter said, can I get out she wanted to score a goal.
Yeah.
And she said, can I play out? And so she played the first half, and then we let her play the second half. And within 3 minutes, she scored a goal.
Oh, that's cool. That's what every goalie wants, right? So I get that goal.
Anyway, I was a little bit of a diversion, but I think
but it's right what you're saying. Again, I've held that with me for so many years. Just like do the basics to a high standard consistently.
I agree.
Like just obsessed in my brain that sentence, and always try and focus on the team. Because
I'm with you. I support you.
That's the very least we should be doing and focusing the time on. You mentioned at the beginning, and I remember when I was thinking about starting this company, you always hear from all your friends, family, every article you could read online about how many startups fail and all of the horror stories and the data. It's not in your favor, right? When you so why do few companies survive and most fail?
Well, so startups are different. Startups are different than scale-ups. They are not the same entity. I'm a big fan of Steve Blank. I don't know if you know who Steve Blank is. He's
I've heard the name.
Of startups. He is a professor at UC Berkeley. He did 8 startups and was highly successful. And then he started teaching it. And he has a great definition of what a startup is. A startup is a temporary organization in search of a business model. Once you find your business model, then you begin to scale. If you think you're a business beforehand, you'll do the wrong things. Founders come to me all the time. Since I did 10 startups and I had pretty good success, right? I mean, I've helped to make people multi-millionaires, as the head of sales and marketing and running the company. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. So I still have to work, but I did pretty well. I'm not complaining. And they said, well, what advice would you give me? And I said, I always tell the same thing to startup founders. You only have 2 things you have to do. One is find a problem worth solving and solve it in such a way that enough people will pay you enough money. That's one thing. The other side of that is do not fall in love with your idea. Your idea will often not be the same thing that is successful.
It is 100%, by the way. What we started with is nothing like what we do now. We found it along the way and pivoted.
As long as it fits into what you love doing and you can be pretty good at it, or you can gain that skill and you love doing it, then who cares, right? So don't do that. And the other thing is don't run out of money. Those are the only 2 things you have to worry about. And once you get through that knothole of that sort of product market fit or whatever you want to call it, then you can start worrying about culture and all these things that the books say. So now you're a scale up, right? You've gotten through and you've done that. And by the way, most startups should fail, but many fail unnecessarily, completely unnecessarily. I mean, they focus on the idea. I was with a guy once, and he was a co-founder, and I was asked to be a consultant to help out. And I was brought on 3 sales calls over about a week and a half. So he said the same thing after every sales call that didn't go well. He said, these people just don't get it.
No, you don't get it because you're not listening.
Exactly. And I said to him, like, I looked him straight in the eye and I said, that sentence is absolutely correct. I said, but your pronouns are wrong. I said, they don't care. They don't have to get it.
It's so true. Yeah.
They don't have to get it. And I think founders are that way. They feel like they're so excited about their idea. They want to convince you how great they are. And I said, people don't care what you do. They only care what you do does for them.
Yeah.
And if you can help with that, then you'll make a difference. So now you're through that knothole, right? And now you're a scale up. Then you have to start doing some of the things that I talked about. And my book is not a comprehensive, do everything I say and I'll be right. But it is a sort of a Pareto principle model, right? If you do these 20, 30% of things, it'll make 70 to 80 to maybe 90% of the difference. And then you can sort of tweak the little knobs, right? And get to that extra, not 100%. That's why it's called Further Faster, the vital few steps to take the guesswork out of the growth. The law of the vital few is the Pareto principle. Mm-hmm. So that's how the name came about. So I think, again, back to, if you focus on team, if you really focus on, I think Jim Collins has it right. It's funny because when I read Good to Great in 1990, whatever, he put it on 96, 97, 98, whatever it was. And I loved it, but I was always confused by this sort of right seats, right thing, right people, right seats, because he never said, how do you know when you have the right seat?
You find it along the way. So like for me and Shane, my founder, when we came in, we didn't really know what seats we sat in because, now all of a sudden, both of us are responsible for everything, right? Sales, marketing, operations, production, finance. And we just found our way into those roles. So like now I look after products, I look after sales, Shane looks after finance, operations, and production. And we found where we could add the most value. And luckily for us, it was on either end of the spectrum almost. And they're both equally, we complement each other from that respect. So I'm out there with the crazy, BHAG ideas and kind of just trying to always disrupt what we're doing, creating content and selling. I love sales, and he doesn't like that side. But we didn't know that. It took us about a year and a half to realize that's where we added the most value. I wish if we knew that going in, we probably would have fast tracked.
Exactly. Right. That's what I said to Jim Collins was, you're the guy who's supposed to tell us what to do. You're supposed to give us the framework that we can work from. And I said, you never identified the right seats. Yeah. So I finally, about a year and a half ago, I wrote to him.
You wrote to him?
And I said, Jim, somehow I got connected to him or found a way to connect to him. And I said, where's the right seats? You've never told us the right seats. And he didn't get back to me. One of his team did, but supposedly they talked to him. And in BE 2.0, which was, so Beyond Entrepreneurship was his first book ever. He wrote it before Good to Great. He finally put in what he said were the right seats. How do you know you have the right seat? I wrote an article about it. I think he's mostly right. I think he missed a couple stuff, so I added a couple things. Me in my arrogance, I'm adding to Jim Collins, right? So, let me make you a little better, Jim. Yeah. You've only sold millions of copies. I've got 500 in my book out there, so I have the right to tell you what to do, don't I? But I did. I've been studying this for a long time, not as long as he has, but a pretty long time. So, and I did it. I've helped run 10, 11, 12 companies. So, so I think, the people part is the most important and team is the most important. If you get that right, I'd say you're 50 to 75% of the way there. Your strategy doesn't have to be awesome. Your execution has to be at least decent. The better, the more solid, the better. But if you can't get, it doesn't matter. I have a client now and we're working on their sales and marketing. They want to work on the process. And I said, what happens if we make an awesome process and you have really crappy people? What's going to happen?
Yeah. People get so caught up in the strategy, right? Like it's like, I remember when we first started as well, we're like, oh, you have to create the business plan, the roadmap, and like iron out everything. And I was like, let's just do it. Like let's execute. And then that will tell us where we should be going, where we should focus attention. But it was obviously the opposite advice that anyone else was giving me. I didn't feel right. I said, Shane, let's speak to the customer. Let's go to market with our product, which is like 10% completed, and then we can start making it. So we basically focused all of our time on execution and then built a strategy around what we were hearing in the marketplace and from our customers. Maybe that's my sales background mindset as well. We can sit here and guess what that may be, or we can go out there and do it and then innovate along the way and pivot. So we kind of went in the opposite direction of.
And to be honest with you, to some degree, that is exactly the science says what you did is correct. So what I teach my folks is the beginning and the end are the most important bits, right? Have a general idea of like, if you're successful, what it will look like, right? Paint that picture.
Yes, we had that.
Well, at least you know where you're headed. It's not a direct line, but as long as you're making progress to that end. And then just start, because the middle is a mess.
100%, you're right. Do you see any research, did you cover this in the book or on your own personal experience around people that have worked in a business prior to starting a company versus people that go straight in from, for example, school or college, as they're a startup, their first job is a startup, versus people that have worked maybe 10 years?
Yeah, so I don't think it's quite that specific. So it's most people have what's called the curse of knowledge. And when you've been in a business, you sort of think things should go a certain way. Where often, not every time, right? But often if you come into it with an open mind and you're not really biased by any prior experience.
Yes.
You don't know
what you don't know.
What you're doing is wrong, right? Where everyone's saying, well, that's completely wrong. You shouldn't do that. Brian and Mr. Chesky and what is it, Ryan? There were three of them, right? They're the biggest hotelier in the world now at Airbnb. But if they went to like the head of Marriott or the Hilton or
you're crazy, that's not going to work.
They never would have done it. Right? They would have said, "Oh, you're no way that's going to happen." And so pick your breakthrough technology or idea, and it often comes from the ignorant.
It's so true. You're right. Yeah. In the book, you say CEO should fire himself from the day to day. You've already mentioned it. You mentioned it briefly, but explain a bit more about what that looks like in reality.
Certainly. So I've spoken to hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 CEOs in the last 3 or 4 years. And I asked them some basic questions. And one is, if you would put a percentage ratio on the time in the business versus on the business, what would that be? And, and to a man, and mostly it's men, by the way, it was 80-20, 80% in the business, 20% on. And I said, so what do you think your job really is as a CEO? And, and I would have them all write it down, and then they would read it out to each other. And they were different, vision and strategy and whatever. And I said, my viewpoint is, yes, those are part of it, but those are not the things that you really is the essence of your job. To me, the essence of your job is to predict the future of the business. And that is a creation process. You need insight, you need innovation in order to do that. And I said, so those are ideas. And I would ask them, where do you get your best ideas? And so I'll ask you, Chris, as the CEO of this company, when you have your best ideas, what are you doing?
Typically talking to customers.
Okay.
Talking to my team, the customers, and also just other industries that are nothing to do with what I do. So
do they come to you, the ideas come to you right then and there?
No, I seek them,
Okay. So you're a little different. Most people, it's in the shower, on a run.
Oh no, so sorry. Yeah, on that point of I didn't get the question. So you just mentioned both of them. So shower, definitely. When I'm working out in the gym. So I get those like, that's like the amount of times I've solved a problem whilst lifting weights in the gym. Those are actually the two. I'll say working out in the gym and in the shower. Right.
So that's when they come to you.
When you're not thinking about business. So when I'm not actually thinking about the business, all of a sudden my brain comes and finds the answer. Yeah. So
and that's one of the things I put in my bio, which is there's a huge gap between science, what science knows and business does. So that's the scientific fact. That's called the edge effect or the weak signal effect. So actually you talking to customers and talking to people is giving your brain all this little information, but it's not connected yet. And then when you're not doing anything, you're letting your brain relax, is when the insights
connect. Yeah.
So you can't do and have that happen at the same time. Your brain actually isn't able to do that. So that's why you need to fire yourself from the day to day, because that's doing, right? The day to day is an operational function. And that's doing. You have to do as little so you can have time to sit back and relax.
It feels counterintuitive though, doesn't it? It's like
totally counterintuitive.
It's so hard, and I'm a big culprit of that. And I've been trying more to remove myself. I think the podcast is one of the big ones. Is like, how do I can't really remove myself from doing the show every day, but I can certainly kind of cut out other areas. that I focus a lot of time and attention on.
But the podcast probably is that weak signal provider, right? Because you're talking to people like me and others.
Yeah, exactly.
Gathering all this cool information, and then maybe 2 or 3 months from now, you're like, bang, something comes into your head just because you combine something I said with another guest.
Always happens.
Like, holy cow.
Yes.
That's why you need to fire yourself from the day to day.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you won't get those ideas, and you'll execute really well, which is great. But if you just execute and you're not learning and growing, eventually you're going to stop growing. It's just, especially these days, things are moving way faster than you even did 10, 15 years ago.
I was going to ask you, this interesting question. If you could have dinner with any leadership icon, who would you want to spend it with and why?
Alan Mulally.
Why is that?
Hands down. So most people don't know who Alan Mulally is, which is, to me,
let's start there.
bizarre. Do you know who he is?
No. So let's start there. Alan
Mulally is, to me, the best leader we have ever had in at least a century of management science. And most people don't know who he is. We think Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, pick your Warren Buffett, whatever, Kirk Kelleher, Southwest. Yes, they're all great leaders, but here's why Alan Mulally, to me, is the best leader. Alan Mulally was at Boeing, and he took over Boeing commercial aircraft in the 90s through 9/11. And he took them out of 9/11 better than they went in. And they were getting their ass kicked by Airbus because France was propping them up and et cetera. Then Bill Ford said, can you do that for me again at Ford? And he did the same exact thing at Ford through 2008. 2 economic existential crises, both companies in trouble. When he took over Ford, I think in September, October of 2006. They lost $17 billion that year.
Oh my God.
Some countries don't make $17 billion. They lost it. Now, this was after he left, but in 2015, which was the year after he left, Ford became the #1 car company again in the world. The last time they was when Henry Ford was running the business. No leader ever in the history of leadership has ever done that twice. Right?
Wow.
And by the way, he is a super nice guy. I am actually friends with Alan Mulally. I am going to have dinner with Alan Mulally at some point in my future. Because I wrote an article about him and he read it and he said, Bill, I loved your article. I would love to speak with you. And in the first moment, I was like, no way. Like,
who's pranking me? Yeah.
Because I've been talking about Alan Mulally. I've been talking about him for years.
Also, it's quite a lot of pressure at that moment, right? You're like, oh my God, what am I going to say?
Yeah, and
like...
so that afternoon, he said, let's talk now. It was like a Saturday. I'm like, okay. So I had like this half an hour, 45-minute conversation with Alan Mulally, and he's just humble. I mean, the man reached out to me. The man has been asked by several presidential administrations to be in the cabinet. He was asked by the Mayo Clinic to help them with the pandemic because he's a logistics expert. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy doesn't need to talk to me, and he called me, and we collaborate. I mean, he sent me like articles and said, "Hey, Bill, can you read this and tell me what you think?" I'm like, okay. And he's actually the reason I'm in MG100, which is a Marshall Goldsmith organization, which 20,000 people have applied to be in this group, and there are only 300 of us. Mm-hmm. And he nominated me to be in. So he, hands down, he's the best leader. If you don't know who Alan Mulally is, read American Icon.
I'm going to now.
You will be in awe of this human being.
If there's sort of one parting piece of advice you would give to the listeners, what would that be? And then where can they connect with you personally if they want to reach out and say hello?
Sure. So my advice is always the same, and I haven't said it yet. So my favorite saying is, few things truly matter, but those that do matter tremendously. Your job as a leader is to figure out the few things that matter to the 2 most important constituencies, which we've already talked about: your customers, not all your customers, your best customers, your core customers, the ones who love you, who you love and are the most profitable, and your best employees. If you can figure out the few things that truly matter to them, you will be light years ahead of everyone in your industry. Hands down, I guarantee it. Mm. So that's what I would recommend. My website is the best place to get me for everything. My book's on there. You can get my book for free if you want. I'm more about the message than the money. But you can go to Amazon or Audible and download it. I get like $4 or $5 every time you do that, so that's cool.
I saw the Audible, by the way. I'm definitely going to check that out. I love an Audible. That's that.
Yeah, and I got an award-winning narrator to do it. It was so awesome.
I'm in. I saw it today.
These books are so boring. They're so boring. I have a ton of stories, and he's an actor, and he acts out the story.
All right, I'm gonna definitely get it now then.
He's so cool. I love it. And actually, I'm friends with him now. So I haven't met him yet because of the pandemic, but he lives in New York, and we're gonna get a beer when I get to New York.
So what's the website, Bill, for everyone?
I'm sorry?
What's the website?
Catalyst Growth. Sorry, I got excited about that. CatalystGrowthAdvisors.com. So everything's on there, all my contact info, etc. So.
And you're on LinkedIn as well, right?
That's where I spend most of my time on social media. LinkedIn.
Cool. So connect with Bill on LinkedIn. And for everyone listening, those links are already in the description below to make your life easier. So click the links below, and you'll definitely grab a copy of the book as well. Go connect with Bill. But thanks again for joining us. It was a real pleasure. And I got a lot of work to do now. So I better get to it.
Chris, you're doing great. Trust me. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Bye.
Sure.